Welcome back to After the Ashes. This is episode 17, The Stories They're Writing and the Ones We're Living. I'm your co-host, Steve, and I'm here with Shawna.
Hello.
And we got quite a bit to talk about today.
We do have a lot to talk about. This is episode 17 that we have titled The Stories They're Writing and the Ones We're Living, which felt apt. I think we discussed a couple episodes ago that there's enough happening in the media at a constant that, kind of having a top line look at what's in the news made sense for our episodes to kind of review for folks what's going on, because no one, even ourselves, can keep up with all of the headlines. Or as I've said multiple times this week, I cannot keep up with all of the fuckery afoot.
Well,
There's
somebody
so much
tries
fuckery
to
afoot.
write about it, but, I get told it's too much.
Don't write, just not so much. So,
The funny thing is you write too much, and then people say you write too much, and then you don't write enough, and everyone's like, "Well, you didn't write enough." And it's like,
we can't please them all. We can't.
No.
But I think today there's so much happening. There's so much news has broken that it's almost we could dedicate an entire episode to just discussing some of the things what's happening in the headlines. So that's some of what we're going to talk about this morning. I wanted to ask you about this, Steve. Did you read the story that hit everywhere yesterday? And when I say yesterday, everyone should know we're recording this on
The 18th.
November 18th. All right. This is our record date.
So
It
this
is
is a
Tuesday,
Tuesday.
November 18th. So I'm talking about a news story that hit yesterday on Monday. And that was about the FEMA's acting admin being out,
Well,
and everything going through Christy Nome. And I know.
I should show you the coaster they have it off the record in DC of her. It's hilarious. It definitely shows the Botox in the lips.
Wait, Botox in the lips?
Yeah, it's just
Lip fillers and Botox.
Oh my gosh, yes, whatever. I don't know. I'm a guy that world doesn't register for me. But okay, so FEMA's been on the decline anyway. I mean, this administration's looking to shut it down. So to lose the acting administrator doesn't really surprise me. And Christy Nome continuing to consolidate doesn't surprise me either. Nothing about that surprises me.
I don't think anything about this administration surprises anybody at this point.
Well, yesterday was FEMA, today's Department of Ed.
Yep.
So
well, I mean, the DOE's been on the chopping block for some time too. They want to privatize it all. But
well, education they want to push to the states and let the states have control over it. So, I mean, that was the last agency created in Washington. So,
I don't want to get too deep into
I'm not arguing
national
the good or
politics.
bad.
You don't want to argue with me today, Steve?
Nah,
you love to argue with me.
I know.
I'll share a little tidbit for those who are newer listeners and have not already gleaned this. Steve and I don't agree on everything. In fact, there's quite a bit we have opposite belief systems around. However, we often find our way to the middle.
It's amazing how that happens if you just have conversation and dialogue.
It is amazing how that, isn't it?
Shocking.
We're just actually open to other viewpoints and listen and analyze and reassess.
We're on new media. We're not allowed to do this. We're supposed to be like hate radio
We're
over
supposed
here.
to be edgy. And
This is boring to people. They don't want to hear this.
I hear you on, it's kind of non-news because we knew that they're trying to kill this as it is. But, while it's non-news, it does impact disaster victims, right? I mean, it does. Like, it's no different than what's happening, right now with, everyone at the IRS being cut, and especially as all of us all of us fire survivors who now have complicated tax scenarios and need more, support from the IRS than ever. It doesn't exist. My accountant was trying to get a hold of someone at the IRS. It's like an impossible feat.
Yes. So I think the thing about FEMA, what this administration is doing, okay, back up. I'm going to say words that are probably going to be offensive to a few of us out there, but this administration is trying to rewrite the rules of disaster relief. And while they're using a sledgehammer to do this, which, like most things they're doing, it's not being handled properly. The intent behind this is that they want to see more of the disaster response going down to the states and having state, yes, there has to be some administration, but the fact is that FEMA has kind of encroached out of its original intent and become more of the go-to. So it's a default for the state. It's like I have kids, and when they start fighting and they come directly to me instead of trying to resolve it themselves, I think I don't think FEMA's dead. I
Mhm.
think there's certainly going to be a change. I just don't know what that's going to look like. And, I'm not going to suspect there's a grand plan with these guys because Lord knows what's happening in there. And it changes daily. I mean, and here's the other thing is, who knows what all this means for this administration? Things are changing there fast. That election on November 4th really put them on the back heels. And they're moving toward that lame duck. It was always a matter of when. Were they going to be able to hold out till 2026? But you're already seeing Republicans balk at this. So what was that?
I apologize. I was queuing up something that I wanted to reference in our next comment, and
Okay,
yes.
so I guess
I got caught.
So she got bored. So I'm going to stop her.
I
talking
did
about
not
FEMA.
I did not actually get bored. For the record, I did not get bored. But also for the record, I'm usually I'm very on the fly, and my brain works a lot faster than my mouth or my moves or my fingers type, as shocking as that is. So it takes me sometimes, I'm like back and forth finding other thoughts and pulling threads together, while we're actually doing our recording.
Yeah, so there you
But,
go. So since I bored you to death,
You
about
didn't
FEMA,
bore me to death on FEMA, but the context is important. But again, I think, it sets up the conversation for, as we keep discussing, what happens for the next disaster.
Well, this is where
right?
states
What
have to
happens when
start
another-
getting, but this is where the state has to start stepping up. And
Yep. But with what money?
What,
Right. Here we go again. But with
Well,
what money?
or,
But hold on.
Or, what's interesting is I proposed this a little bit, I was playing with it a little bit in my Substack. I think it was yesterday or today. Or maybe it was today. I haven't published it yet. But the idea that maybe this is where, I don't want to say privatization, but I mean, we got to introduce a different dynamic here. Oh, it was in probably one of the storylines I was thinking about as we're coming up on the year timeline.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I guess that's probably a good transition to one of the other topics that we're going to talk about is, the definition of insanity being the same, doing the same thing over and over again.
Yeah. And expecting a different result.
And we've been talking about, and it's been very clear that the county and the state have had deficiencies in their response to the fire. And so the question becomes is there a different way to do this? And what does that look like? And, instead of relying on the feds, maybe there's a different approach that we could look at, and maybe not even relying on the county or the city or the state. I mean, maybe we could move faster if we were catalyzing private approaches, and not necessarily a public-private partnership, but, where philanthropy and other investors and
Which is
types
how
of
it works
people.
now, which is a setup as well for what's happening
But it's all
right now in
slow,
our parks.
But there's no accountability.
Correct.
And so the keys that's missing there is transparency. And I think that's the piece, because transparency brings trust. And I think that's the piece that's missing. But I think what we're seeing and hearing is that there's a creak on the government side, and maybe removing FEMA from this equation, while blunt and insensitive and stupid on one level, opens the door for other options on another level. And
I don't disagree with you. However, in the current construct,
no, I'm not
right?
disagreeing
What do
with you.
people do now? Like if
If a
if one
massive
of our neighboring towns,
disaster hits tomorrow,
yeah, if this happened here in one of our neighboring towns, even in California where we have, arguably significant resources, we are not prepared as a state to handle that without the injection of federal funds.
Well-
That's evident in everything we've been talking about across the last
I don't think this is
16
a question
episodes.
of the FEMA money going away. I think it's
Right.
a question of how it's dispersed.
Okay.
And I think that what they're saying is, instead of it being centrally located, it becomes more like a grant, and let the state determine how they want to spend the money, as opposed to the federal government determining it.
Which is that actually is a fair and reasonable path forward.
Which I think but I think the federal government's also saying it's not all federal money. Like, the state has to also step up and commit resources and catalyzing. Do things like, I don't know, a bill that probably could have unlocked a ton of money,
I know.
but then turns it down because tomorrow this could happen, and that could have been catalyzed instantaneously. Instead, now we're still back at square one. That's what we're not doing, is reading the room. But I think the federal government is continuing to push forward. The same thing with the CDBG money and reauthorizing it. We're going to be in the same boat. If they're cutting FEMA, do you really think we're going to get CDBG DR money? Like, I'm not sure where people's minds are in all this. But again, there's smarter people than I out there, maybe. that are looking at this and understand things in a different context than I do. But to me, this is not a good sign for those that are expecting more federal participation as opposed to less.
I think it's not about the participation, but about the money.
Well,
Because, right, we just know, like, where,
well, where's the supplemental money coming?
Exactly.
If they're cutting the front end, they're definitely going to cut the back end.
Correct. It's the ongoing theme of money. Where is it? Where is it coming from?
There
and we're
are
going to talk about
there's
that.
a
'cause
tremendous
it's
number
coming
of
from
sources.
some areas we may not want it to come from, and that's a whole other conversation. So, I mean, that was one of the top stories. Another top story, a lot closer to home, is one that has been discussed the last few days. So, if you were in some circles, there was a Black town hall hosted by a number of orgs and a radio station, KBLA, show hosted by a gentleman named Tavis Smiley. And, you know, I was seeing via some of my friends and contacts in the community that SCE had been invited to this town hall. There was a big conversation about the fact that SCE was going to come and speak directly to the community, specifically the Black community of Altadena, and discuss some of the issues of their offer, right, and how problematic this offer is. Now, I think we could, we're not going to digress into a conversation about how
this is the same
incredibly
offer.
problematic this offer is, because folks still think this is, you know, it is not SCE's intent to make anyone whole. It is not SCE's intent to do the right thing per their own admission, their
let's
own
hear the
PR
line. I want to hear the PR line. This is so.
Oh my
so
gosh,
good.
I don't have it right in front of me. It was in we talked about it in one of our last 2 episodes, but the
my
PR
God.
line was basically like, we're trying to mitigate our losses. That's it.
We're
not trying to make you whole.
No, yeah, that was the thing. We're not
We're
going
not going to make you
whole.
whole. As we are trying to mitigate our loss. Like it's like it's like someone's telling you, I'm coming to rob you. Just PS, when you hear me breaking the glass in the back door, it's because I'm coming to rob you, not bring you gifts. So, but anyhow, so I think we know we don't have to discuss too deeply or too much in depth the fact that the offer is not great. It may be okay for some people for some reasons. That's between you, your God, and you're a very good lawyer. But for the most part and for most people, it will be pennies on the dollar, and it's not great. But, you know, the bottom line is that SCE had been invited to attend this town hall, and their representatives agreed to attend this town hall. Initially, it was Pedro, SCE's, you know, CEO, you know, their top officer, who was supposed to be there speaking. And long story short, SCE bailed last minute. And they blamed it on the fact that there would be plaintiffs' attorneys sharing billing and on the panel stage with SCE, and they couldn't do that. Now, we can't get the Epstein files, but we can get the SCE files, because these folks are not playing around, and they have receipts, and they shared all of it. You can find it in our Instagram stories at Beautiful Altadena right now. You can find it on Altadena Rising's social media. You can find it on Tavis Smiley's page and on their website. It's everywhere. They dropped all of the email comms between them and SCE's multiple representatives. And it's very clear what happened. SCE said they were coming. SCE decided they were not coming. And for reasons unknown, but we'll jump into that briefly. And then blamed it on, again, this plaintiff attorney issue. However, as documented in the emails and reiterated in the emails, they made it clear multiple times when asked, it was abundantly clear, there are no plaintiff attorneys involved. None are on the social media. They shared their social media assets, their promo assets, their logo. They shared everything. And we're like, hey, there's no attorneys involved at all. This is just SCE. That is not a concern. But that is what SCE is now blaming the community on, and blaming the event organizers for the reason that they didn't show up, when in fact that was not it. So on top of everything,
Well, look,
these guys are busy gaslighting.
They're afraid to have to meet the
community.
yeah,
So
the
this,
victims, the
so if
victims.
I mean, we call ourselves fire survivors, because I don't think any of us feel, you know, like we want to be identified as victims, but you know, we are victims. And in the case of many of these families, they lost loved ones. Their families are dead. They are in fact victims. Now, what I heard through the grapevines was that the real issue is that our sheriff's department declined to provide them security. So apparently, when they did their little open houses at the park and the other community open houses that they did for community feedback on their draft SCE a few months back, a couple months back, the sheriff's department, including our local deputies, were tasked with being on site to be security. They declined to do that again, and it seems that SCE was concerned about the optics of that, of having, if they cannot have the sheriff there, which would look, perhaps quite normal, like it's a community event. Of course, the sheriff is there. This is nothing to see here. No big deal. But if they would not do that and they had to bring in their private security, those optics wouldn't be great. And that may in part be what led to them choosing to bail out of something they agreed to previously.
So now they're concerned about optics?
Right. Well, now and that is the perfect way to wrap up this topic. Someone in the community sent me a video of our good friend Pedro, because there was a whole thing of like, where in the world is Pedro? Where is Pedro, since he can't make it to the community event that he promised to be at? And it was someone said, oh, I found Pedro. He's here at Unincorporated Coffee with his private security. And it was, in fact, a video of Pedro at Unincorporated Coffee with his private security and his private bodyguard, who evidently were sitting uncomfortably close to a number of people in a pretty threatening way, to make it clear that they needed to stay away. The fact that this guy has the balls to go out, if you feel that you need private security and a bodyguard with you to be in our community, get the fuck out. Somebody pull this guy's card, stop him at the border. Pedro, you're not welcome here. Okay, let's just be very clear. Unless you are coming to deliver information that is critical, you've been invited, someone, and you're a guest. Our businesses are not for you. Our community is not for you. That's it. Like, you're not welcome in Altadena, buddy. Stay at your lovely home in South Pass.
So
I know. There's no words for it. It's so gross. There's no words.
Well, look,
but
I
that
mean,
was
give him the ball. Give him a little bit of credit for actually showing up into the town. I mean,
for what though?
I don't know.
What?
Why?
Exactly.
Are you patronizing our establishments to continue to show support for Altadena? I mean, that's the question I'd be asking. I mean,
get your coffee somewhere else, Pedro. Go to Dunkin'. Maybe they want you.
Hey, American runs on Dunkin'. No, we're not paid to say that, just so you know.
We're not.
We don't have any sponsors
I
here.
just came back from my lovely East Coast road trip a few weeks ago. I can't believe it was already a few weeks ago. And was reminded.
Coffee there.
I know. And I was reminded of like Dunkin' everywhere. Dunkin' is everywhere. You could be in the smallest, tiniest, no name, no gas, one gas station town. Yep. And there is a Dunkin' drive-through.
Look, we have that in Canada. It's called Tim Hortons. All right.
I love it. So another topic in the news this week has been foreclosures. Steve is looking at me a little quixotically because we have not even discussed this, but
quixotically?
What's the word? Is that word?
Quizzically?
Quizzically? No. There's another. We were just having a huge conversation before taping about language and words that we use and words that we tend to make up and don't even realize that we've made up.
It's a word. It's a word. Exceedingly idealistic, unrealistic, and impractical.
Yes. Thank you.
Oh, no, it's chaotic. Sorry. Oh. Yes, I know what chaotic is.
Yes. Okay, so I mispronounced the word. I pronounced the word the way I say it in my head, which apparently is incorrect.
Quizzically.
But quizzically also works.
Puzzle, questioning, surprised or amused. Yes.
He is all of those things.
Yes.
But another issue that continues to be pervasive in the community is that of foreclosures. A lot of people
I thought that they
are
had
buckling.
Legislation to address this.
It's just not enough, Steve.
So
that's the problem.
So it's
just
not mortgage
not enough.
abatement. It's just foreclosure in general.
Yep.
Okay.
It is. It's this is an ongoing concern, unfortunately, for so many. And as usual, certain communities are impacted more heavily than others.
But why would a bank want to foreclose on a community that's, I guess...
They don't give a fuck.
No, but I mean...
Steve, you already know the story. You know that my mortgage lender put me in foreclosure while actively sitting on having cashed the checks and sitting on the money that was not only the entirety of a payoff of my mortgage, but also about an additional 6 figures. And they sat on that for months while I fought them, while they destroyed my credit and put me falsely in foreclosure.
I mean, I guess from an investment perspective, it's if you know that you're going to seize the land at a value that is going to be...
The dirt is worth more than what people owe on their mortgages.
And I guess, too, you have the insurance or the Edison money that will come in, so that'll make that whole. So basically, you're going to get a single-family home and property, and then you can turn it into a multifamily.
Yeah,
so it's
which,
from an investment perspective.
Yep, I know.
Wow.
Yep,
wow.
It's pretty dark.
I mean,
and
so which mortgage companies are most? Because I think a lot.
I
of
haven't gotten into asking people what the specific, but I've heard it come across multiple. Like I haven't seen a poll that's getting into the depths of exactly which lenders are the worst lenders, but I've seen it everywhere from the Fannie Mae, Fannie Mac lending
because that's
to the
FHA,
private,
and so FHA
to the private
is
lenders,
federal government.
Yep, to the private lenders.
But the federal government then sells the house to investors in an auction, typically.
Well, I think the point is it's happening. People need further support. When you're looking at a 3 to 5 year rebuild timeline to get back into your community, which is the reality for many, if not most, in Altadena, including myself.
I was talking to an elected about this.
It means that people need more than a year of forbearance. They need forbearance until they can get back in their home because people cannot afford to pay rent somewhere else, which they are because ALE runs out at 2 years, 3 years max, and that's if you had enough funds to get you that far. Most do not.
Yep.
Right? We've talked about this before. People are already running out of ALE right now. End of the year is the second round. The first round kind of ran out at the 6-month mark. The next round's running out at the 12-month mark. We've already got families and people living in their cars in the community. That is a very real thing that is happening and not being addressed.
Yep.
And this is just going to drive further inequity and further drive people out of town.
Well, and here's another thing that I think, and I was talking to an elected about this from a policy perspective, continuing to layer debt onto properties, I think is another component to this that is, I think from whether it's economic development, community development, or just government, they like to either tax credits or debt. And they think that if they reduce debt, that's still, debt. But that's more affordable, but it's really not. I mean, there has to be a third way. We have to figure out, again, we have figured it out, but they're not letting us use the tool where, we're not burdening already cash, I don't want to say cash starved, but cash challenged borrowers with more debt.
Right.
Most people have paid off their mortgages or set their mortgages in a way that, they don't.
Or they have insanely good interest rates. So many people refied during the pandemic and have 2 to 4% interest rates.
Right, but they've got it down to like $200,000, and then to add a $500,000 SBA loan plus, it's just too much.
It is.
And you're taking somebody who they can't. That's not their cash flow.
Correct.
And there's got to be a better way to do this, and a different way to do this, for borrowers. And I think, this is one of the things that I was discussing with this elected is that I think this is a critical policy question that Washington's going to have to look at. And I think that there's a way to get there. I think we've discussed potentially a path to do it in how we've looked at affordable housing, particularly on the Substack. So I just think that this is a component of the capital stack that has to start to get into. If we're starting to see foreclosures, we can forestall foreclosures, which are going to just, ruin our community for no reason if we can do this right. And I think that tools like SBA with the proper financing mechanisms in place can get us there, but I don't think it's going to be more debt. And if you don't have the money to pay the debt, you don't have the money for a tax credit.
Exactly.
So there's got to have to be a third way. And
this is what people have been saying for so long. It's like, especially if you're a retiree and you have no income.
Thank you, Governor. We had the tools.
I know. We can only hope. I mean, I was having this conversation in reference to our parks, which we're going to get to in a moment here. But, we have the tools to finance the rebuild. We don't need to rely on selling the entire town like a NASCAR jacket to anyone who wants to throw a patch on it.
But you do if all you're going to do is tax increment financing.
That's my point. You know,
But
is that
when
we
you
had the
cut
tools
off
and we
the
chose not to
tools-
use it. So
when
now
you cut
we
off
have
the
this shit.
tools to do that, then that's what you're going to be stuck with.
So to wrap up this foreclosure issue, I actually want to read this because I have a feeling most people listening to this podcast otherwise will never hear it or see it. But Heavenly Hughes at My Tribe Rise is circulating a petition. You can find that on her social media, their social media. But you know, the note that she sent out said, Altadena neighbors, when the winds came and the fires burned our community to the ground in January, we experienced a disaster on a scale we could have never imagined. Now we are experiencing the second disaster. Families are not getting the financial resources they need to stay on their land in Altadena and rebuild. We are witnessing the historic Black community of West Altadena being pushed out. Many of us still paying mortgage payments on houses no longer standing. Many of us not having insurance or insurance that isn't paying. Some of us even facing foreclosure. Many of us still figuring out where the money to rebuild is going to come from or how to hang on in the interim, debating whether we can hold out until we get a settlement from SCE, which could be years away. And then she goes on to talk a little bit about Newsom's AB 238, which we, of course, know about, which has given some mortgage forbearance with up to a year, but that year is stacked on top of the original 4 months, so it's actually only 8 months. And the reality that it's not enough. It relies on homeowners to opt in, and it excludes elders and displaced residents who, you know, like you said, have different scenarios or may have had next to no mortgage or a virtually paid off mortgage. So, you know, with knowing that all of these legal cases against SCE are not going to resolve until 2027, that's the likelihood. We may see some resolution in 26 for the first round, but the majority it's going to be 27, maybe even dragging into 28. And that is when people, for context again, for anyone listening, the fire happened in January 2025. We're heading into the 1 year of January 2026. You're looking at 2 to 3 years to rebuild a home from plans, permits, construction.
Well,
and then layering
and permitting, while we may be moving them through,
we're gonna talk about that too. It's not the permitting is not going great either. So all of this, and excuse me, sneezing away over here. My allergies have been crazy. But you know, at the end of this, Altadena's residents are in a really tough spot.
Please hold.
Oh my gosh, my allergies are wild. And they shouldn't be with the rain tamping everything down, but they are. So I apologize, listeners, that you have to hear me running away and sneezing, as not to sneeze at poor Steve's face or anyone else. I was a very CDC-approved sneeze. But
that's all right.
Anyhow, the bottom line is, again, people in the community have already been forced out. The way that things are going on multiple levels, we're seeing more and more people forced out. Everyone has a 5-year timeline at this point, if not longer, to get back into their homes in the community. A lot can't, even if they have the money, they can't wait, but the majority just don't have the resources. Who has the resources to ride out 5 years while paying a mortgage and rent somewhere else? Like, show me that person. Nobody has this. So what is being asked in this petition, this Stop the Foreclosures petition, is that Newsom figure out how to freeze all fire-related foreclosures in Altadena. That's simple. You know, if we're not going to say, hey, let's give people mortgage relief until they actually have a home to get back into, then, you know, at the very least, we have to freeze foreclosures. I think it's actually a very minimal ask. So I hope that the governor hears that and heeds that call because, again, what has made our community are the people. And we're losing that at a much more rapid clip than I think anyone wants to acknowledge or is frankly very aware of.
Look, they're freezing rent, so they might as well just freeze foreclosures too.
Exactly. Well, are they freezing rent?
No, but
they're not
you know
freezing
what
rent.
I mean. There's been no problem to do it on the renter side, so let's see what we can do to. I mean, and the governor's obviously tacking to the left. This is very much a left issue.
Yeah.
Particularly coming into the election.
Yep.
And with, you know, affordability becoming a major issue, having people leave their homes because they can't afford to rebuild, I think is a very definition of affordability issues.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And something has got to give. And what that is, I think, is unknown.
Well, but now
it's got to start with better policy.
But then you got to go against the banks and the mortgage companies.
Which no one will do.
Well.
Because we come back full circle to everyone is in bed with everyone because all of their financial and political interests are intertwined. And this is why
Well,
none of our electeds actually work for us because they are all bought and paid for.
well, I think there's a way to do it. There's always a third way. I mean, you don't have to skin the cat one way or the other. There's multiple ways. I just think that we get into this binary dynamic, and it doesn't have to be. But
Yep.
nobody's asking me for my opinion, so I'm not going to give them unless asked.
Steve, you're always going to share your opinion. It's why you're here.
Well, this one I haven't been asked to solve yet. Okay. So
Are you going to solve it for us?
I don't know. I have to think about it.
Okay.
Give me like
All right.
at least a run in an hour.
All right.
I mean, I looked
In
at
our
you
next episode.
quizzically.
In our next episode, Steve is going to solve all of our problems. As I'm poking him over here about that,
Well,
the reality is we actually have been talking about that. That we talk a lot about all the things that are challenging and plaguing the town, and solutions have been brought. And there was a really great bill on the table, and that is the most frustrating part. And we're still having those conversations around how do we fix this, right? So I think stay tuned. There will be an episode at some point sooner than later of Steve and I saying if Steve were king or I were king.
Queen.
I would not be queen. I would never be queen. I would also be king.
Isn't that the most powerful piece on the chessboard?
Well, that's another. I won't go down that rabbit hole. But anyhow, let's move on.
See, I flummox her.
All right, you didn't flummox me.
Oh, there we go.
And also, don't fuck with my my grammar and vocab this morning, Steve.
I'm the last person to talk, as every reader knows. I'm the worst.
Also, this is our Canadian over here. Sorry.
Yeah,
I shouldn't poke fun at the Canadians, but I've watched too many South Park episodes.
Well, when married to one.
Yes, I know. It wears off.
So let's
talk about another thing that hit the news cycle yesterday locally, and that was the big announcement all over the news channels, huge coordinated press effort from Disney.
I didn't see it.
I know you missed it. I don't know where you were, but
I read
announcing
the LA Times every day. It wasn't there.
Well, it's going to be there soon, I'm sure, because it was
looking
all over
right
broadcast
now.
news. But it was the announcement from Disney that they were ponying up $5 million and enlisting some Imagineers, including some of our local Altadena Imagineers. We have a big Disney.
Can you explain to me what an
community.
Imagineer is, please?
They're the folks who imagine. That's what Disney calls their planners, right?
So like the planners that do the theme parks.
Correct. They're the people who develop theme parks, who imagine worlds, generate these incredible worlds, and bring them to life. So what they do is incredible. They are incredible people. We, just like we have lots of JPL, literal rocket scientists in town, we have a lot of Disney Imagineers in town. And a lot of those folks lost their homes too, and want to do positive things to rebuild our community, which I think is incredible and should absolutely be leaned into and leveraged wherever possible. I think it's just unfortunate that it got done in a way that, unfortunately, but not surprisingly, is not sitting well with the community. So this big announcement yesterday about Disney and the park blindsided many, including our town council, who apparently were not made privy to any of this deal going on. And while, for some, they're like, hey, well, this is great. Why would anyone complain about Disney wanting to come in and build this amazing park and leveraging their Imagineers and having this incredible space developed for us? It raised a lot of big questions that require some history and context to really unpack. And to even begin to have this discussion, we have to understand that LA County has spent the last few years, literally years, working with the historically Black West Altadena community where Charles White Park is located on reimagining that park. And it has been years of community meetings, walkthroughs, development plans, implementation of notes and et cetera, that got them to a place where they finally agreed with the community on what the direction of this park would look like, and how it would be rebuilt with our taxpayer money, with our money. So what was it? I believe
3 points.
Three-
You're talking about
three point-
$3.7 million.
$3.7 million of our tax
But it
money
looks
from the
like
county.
Disney's kicking in another $5 million.
Well, no, it's not that they're kicking in another $5.
It's directing $5. Walt
It's
Disney
directing
Company's
$5. But the
million
question that is being asked, there's a lot of questions being asked, is what happened
to the 3.7.
Well, what happened to the 3? Where's our tax dollars? What happened to the 3.7? Which is, as usual, where's our money? And where's our property tax dollars actually going? That's always the question. But, the issue here for our conversation is also what happened to the plans? There were all of these plans that the entire community agreed on. And while it's great that Disney wants to bring in this money, at what cost? Like the community that engaged in this entire lengthy process to redevelop this park was not consulted in any way. No one even knew this was happening. It sounds like county actually asked Disney to keep this announcement under wraps until it was already out there and the deal was done. And the reason why was because, I have no doubt county told Disney that they had community buy-in, and they did not have community buy-in. And it's not the first time. This is what happened at Loma Alta Park, where we now have a Dodgers field because the county took Dodgers money and gave them naming rights. And this is the NASCAR jacket, comment that actually came from someone in our group who was like, well, is Altadena a NASCAR jacket? We're just like selling every inch of space for you to slap a logo on it. Like, what are the naming rights for Disney? And, one of the questions I raised was actually, who's maintaining this thing? Like, this looks incredible, and that money is going to buy the development of the park. But we have extreme weather. Shocker, right? I think we know this. We have extreme weather. We have all manner of, even just the normal elements destroy park equipment, especially kids' playground equipment.
So
where's the money to maintain this?
Who sustains the initial investment?
What's the real plan? What's going to happen? And,
so
if we're talking about
ears or, what does that look like?
Altadena already is 30 years behind in infrastructure and maintenance of that infrastructure. All right. We're still fighting to get our lines undergrounded, to get decent water company municipalities. Like, this is another battle that's ongoing, is trying to unify our water companies, because that's a bunch of little family-owned private, fiefdoms that ultimately undoubtedly contributed to our disaster on January 7, one of those myriad factors in our cascade of failure of a fire response. So again, how does this all fit in? And most importantly, though, why is the community not being consulted? What happened to everyone preaching Altadena is not for sale? Because apparently Altadena is for sale, and you can slap a logo on it for the right price.
Well, I think it's a microcosm of the bigger issues we've been talking about. Why would you create a bill like 782 that removes the protest vote and community input, or how we're going to finance all of this? And I think this is just par for the course, honestly. And Altadena is viewed as a way station to whatever agenda is involved here.
That's what I think. What I keep trying to explain to those I talk to about this is that we are just a pawn in a game that is so much bigger than us that most don't even understand what's at stake. They don't even know what the game is being played. And, unfortunately, we keep talking and beating this drum of like the development, what's happening with the development.
But these are all tests to see how much the community is going to push back. And if the community doesn't push back, this is what the Trump administration does, is it's like one little step. How much
can you get away with?
And then each step they do, you get further away from what the center is. And eventually you realize that it's already done. They're not going to kill you with a stab to the gut. It's going to be 1,000 slashes.
Correct. And that's happening. So, I mean, we've just been saying, make no mistake, the heart and soul of the community, is at stake. And I think as we wrap up this topic, I want to just, one of the members of our town council, because there are a few on there who are working for the community and who have raised the alarm many times since the fire and unfortunately been largely silenced. But, the issues that needed clarity were, does this new Disney proposal incorporate the original park redesign plans, the ones that the community reviewed, provided feedback on, and approved before the fire? All of those plans were created with public input. They included native landscaping, cultural elements that were important to the community, and sculptural installations honoring Charles White. And for anyone who doesn't know who Charles White is, who is the namesake of that park, he was a very important Black artist, arguably one of the most important Black artists in American history. The Board of Supervisors had previously secured $3.576 million of our tax dollars for improvements that included new walking paths and a sports court, updated lighting, exercise equipment, trees for shade, water-wise landscaping, and an outdoor classroom, in addition to a prefab multi-purpose building. And there were a lot of civic art elements that honored Charles White. So those funds were actually tied to legislative action that was supported by Supervisor Barger, Rep. Judy Chu, and the County Department of Arts and Culture. There were also early community presentations, including sculptural concepts by artist Wesley Clark, that were part of that original scope. How are those commitments being honored or integrated into this Disney proposal? Because there was no mention of any of that. The concerns are real and they're valid, and the community requests and demands that they be a partner in the redevelopment of Altadena, and that the community's voice needs to be the central piece, especially when that park bears the name of a towering Black American artist whose legacy deserves thoughtful stewardship. And I think, that's fair and reasonable. You don't need to be Black to understand that is important in any community, but especially in ours, where, again, we're going to lose a lot of people. And it's not going to be, we already know it's not going to be the same, but our people are,
same, but it's a question of shaping what.
Correct.
And if you don't have any input in it, and
That's
it's just
right.
being dictated on top, then that just makes it even more
feels like
arbitrary.
a Trojan horse.
Well, it's arbitrary.
People are like, oh, it's a gift. It's a gift. I'm like, no, it's a Trojan horse. So, there's a lot more to this. Like I said, this went on for years, and I could talk about this one for an entire episode, because I think especially after what happened at Loma Alta, that really steamrolled the community under the guise of but it's nice, look at, this is nice. We're doing something for you that's nice. Take it. It's like, well, no, we know what we want, and why can't we speak to what we want? It's really frustrating, and I really hope that the community is heard on this.
But that's a really interesting viewpoint, because I think that's the fear that a lot of the response to this is going to be, a lot of response to this fire and this disaster is being now arbitrarily dictated to us, as opposed to allowing us a seat at the table and having our own say.
It is a very patriarchal approach to the redevelopment, which I probably said in episode 2 or 3, and I haven't said in a while, but it's a very patriarchal approach to disaster recovery, that someone else knows best, that we don't know what we need, we don't know what we want, someone else does, and let Disney come in. Let's Disneyfy the town, and that's what we want. That's what we want. We should be so thankful, we should be so appreciative of what we're being given.
But remember, when we actually put our opinion out, we got shot down.
Yep.
Which is even more obnoxious or more frustrating. So I guess that takes
it's obnoxious.
Sorry, let's bring us back.
Let's bring us back
to the 1 year part.
We're coming to the 1 year part. So, Steve and I have been comparing notes, as many of the journalists that we have spoken to over the year are all kind of resurfacing and percolating their thoughts around what stories are important to Altadena right now as we head into the 1 year, which issues perhaps have been resolved, which issues remain outstanding. And, it's been a time for us to really take stock as we try and, support what is being spoken about in the community and elevate, important issues in the community. And my takeaway looking at this was like, oh my God, we're at 10 months and fucking nothing is resolved. We have bigger issues now than ever, bigger issues, bigger questions. None of the community asks have been honored. Nothing that was promised has been followed through. You don't want to be, entirely negative. And again, I think, with everything, it's why with everything that Steve and I discuss here, it is couched in the reality that there are solutions if anyone would choose to listen and enact those. There are ways to fix this. It does not have to be this way. But here we are. And so in one of those stories that came up, and this is something we haven't talked about a lot, I don't know if we've covered on the podcast, actually. A journalist wanted to talk to me specifically about why the gas company quickly, willingly, arbitrarily, on their own volition, cut the gas when the fire kicked off in the Palisades, but never did that in Altadena.
Why didn't
The
they?
gas continued running for days.
No, I
There were
know
gas fires burning for days. People were calling the gas company, begging for them to turn it off. One of my girlfriends who had a still standing home on a street where nearly everything else was gone, before she knew that that was, a bigger nightmare for other reasons, was calling anyone she could, begging them to please go up and turn off the gas because she was afraid that was going to take out her house that had otherwise survived the fire. Made it through. And the gas company told her they couldn't send anybody out. There was nothing they could do. She finally called the sheriff's department and asked, hey, can you, please help me, please. She's like, I'm begging you. Like, I'm a single woman. I cannot, get back into Altadena. This is the point at which the National Guard and sheriff had shut the town down. She's like, I cannot get in. And I know that you're making rounds to properties and you're there. And I'm just saying, if you're driving by, would you please, just as a neighborly thing, I'm begging you as a favor, please go cut the gas at my house. Just go take a wrench and cut it because I'm so afraid I'm going to lose the house. And not only did the deputy that she spoke to very unfortunately, tell her in no uncertain terms that they could not and would not do that. But when she was reduced to tears on this phone call and said, what would you do if this was your home? The response this deputy gave her, and she has this call recorded, by the way. The response he gave her was, if it were me, I would have never left the house without turning off the gas first. When I heard that, I was like, are you fucking kidding me? Is this for real? This is the speaking of obnoxious response that a deputy would give someone at this point who's trying to desperately save their home, she had to explain to him on the rest of this call that she's a single woman who has a very atypical work schedule, who was sound asleep when the fire broke out and only got out of her house with her bird. She has an amazing bird, a giant bird, and her 2 cats alive because the neighbors banged her door down and got her out. Because again, even on the east side, many people did not get an evacuation alert. She was one of them. So, it was really disturbing and alarming. And no, but worse. She's one who's in the worst possible situation I can imagine, to be honest. Her home was standing even when the county went through and walked by visually to create the DINS maps. Her house is the only house on her street, one of just a couple of 60 homes gone and 2 standing. But her house is set way back off the street at the back, perched over the canyon. It was a mid-century post and beam. They did not have any idea how bad it was until she really got in there days after the fire. Her house was impacted so heavily that her windows, her big, the windows on a mid-century home, right? Yeah. Just massive glass windows looking into this gorgeous canyon. The windows were all melted into puddles on the ground, the glass. The wood, it's post and beam, and the wood is smoked to the point that it's not only permeated with smoke and parts of it were ashen, the sap was dripping out of it because it was so destroyed. Every inspector that's been out has told her that home has to be taken down to the studs. And she's one of the thousands of people still fighting insurance because she was CFP, California Fair Plan, the insurer of last resort for fire coverage only, and they maintain that she has cosmetic damage. Her house is destroyed. She is displaced permanently until that house can be rebuilt from the studs. She has a significant mortgage because she bought more recently, and that she is paying on top of rent because she's also hardly getting ALE because of her cosmetic damage. And meanwhile, we're 10 months in, and her home is now overtaken by rats and every other vermin you can imagine. So anything that had survived is now completely destroyed. It's that's just one of, again, thousands of nightmare stories. This is what our community is living. But I'm really interested to see where this investigative journalism piece leads on the gas, because that's that's a question that's been asked by so many.
Well, how much was the gas being left on still a function of, did that cause fires after the fact?
Yeah, absolutely. We know it.
So the gas company is culpable in some of the destruction that we've had.
Potentially.
Wonderful.
Yeah. Good times.
All right.
Good times in the post-fire rodeo. So let's talk about, briefly as we wrap this. We've gone long again, guys. This is what happens. We try hard. We have notes. We have a structure. We try hard to stay on point. But even when we are on point, there's so much to discuss. We could go on for hours on this stuff. But we were going to talk about some of the development realities that are coming into focus. And, we already lost the war or just this battle. And, it's not just about, the Dodgers financing a field at Loma Alta and having their name slapped on it, a corporate name, which is, if again, it sounds like it's an okay thing from the outside, but if you've been in Altadena a long time, if you really understand the nature of our community, there couldn't be anything more antithetical to what Altadena is than to slap Disney on a park or to slap Dodgers on a park and to put multicolored, things in there that didn't exist. It just could not be less what Altadena is. And that is an ongoing frustration as it ties to even what's happening with the redevelopment and how slow the permitting process is going. We discussed in one of our last episodes the dashboard, and that they had issued 500 and something permits. Only 300 and something of those were unique permits, meaning not just like a house and an ADU. But as far as those who can actually get into building, that is a much smaller number. And I know you and I are both hearing through the grapevine that the county is so wildly still unprepared for the volume of rebuild permitting that they are putting up unspoken roadblocks at various points of redevelopment and rebuilding because they don't have the ability to handle it otherwise.
Right.
So, I mean, where does this put us, right? And I mean, if we go up
what's
and
the
look,
point? Is it better to have people waiting to get a permit or people to get a permit and then have to wait? And
it's not better to wait at all. We were promised a number of things right out of the gate,
but those
including
promises aren't realistic.
We know.
Shawna, I mean, let's be honest. They were never going to be realistic. And I think
don't tell people that you're going to do something. It's like, don't tell people that you're going to suspend SB 9 in our community and ensure that community that's rebuilt looks like the community that was lost, because that's absolutely not what is happening. I'm going to refer back to my tract 4602, right? Because that is where I live, and it's where in 4602 we saw near total destruction, where it's just everything is gone. And even the few trees that made it, we just saw a couple of them lost to the rain this last weekend. The heavy rain was enough to saturate roots that were so compromised by the fire that even if the tree looked like it's going to make it, a lot of them are not going to make it. With a few weather events, they're going to be done and down, and one came down on a car this weekend. But if you look at what's going up in the community, and there are builds going up in the community, which is incredibly encouraging to see, because we need to see that. We need some beacon of hope that we're going to rebuild this town one way or another. But if you look at it, and you, again, contextually, the community was full of single-story homes, cottages, average of 12 to 1,500 square foot homes. What is going up now and what is being allowed with the way that things are being allowed to be permitted, maxing out lots with up to 4 structures per lot. You heard me right. Every lot can have up to 2 homes and up to 2 ADUs. So you're looking, and it's a sea of 2-story homes, which means if you wanted to rebuild something that is architecturally like for like to what you lost, like my single-story Jane's Cottage, going to look pretty out of place and tiny. And then what is your property value like when you're the little house on the street of all the big houses with towering 2-story ADUs, and then all of your privacy is gone? And, it's not that we can't and shouldn't allow people to rebuild a 2-story home if that's what they really want. But I think we also have to understand that, what we're giving up at the same time. And that is, the character of the community and certainly the privacy that I know for a lot of people is really important. It's the rise of the mini mansion and the 2-story ADU.
it's exactly what everybody expected to have happen.
I know. I hate being right, Steve. I said this to someone last night. Man, it's a bitch being right all the time. I don't like it. I would love to be wrong. Please make me wrong on some of this, because it sucks. It all sucks.
Well, look, I think we're at a point where, as a community, we have to continue to try to hold our people to account the best we can, and know that we don't have to accept what's being said and being offered, and see what's available. So
it's time to fight the power, as it were.
Well, I don't know if you have to fight the power.
Well, I think we do have to fight the power.
Well, that's because you're a fighter.
I am.
I'm more of a diplomat when it comes to that stuff.
I can be diplomatic too, but I'm also,
I know.
I'm of a certain fuck around and find out age.
I'm aware.
So as we wrap this one up, let's give our small business shout out. I want to talk about a very specific situation. Another topic that was also in the news the last couple of weeks, if anyone's paying attention to local headlines, and that is Two Dragons Martial Arts, the martial arts studio.
They were in the LA Times.
Yep, they were in the LA Times the other day on North Lake. I'm not going to try and say her name because I don't know how to pronounce it correctly, and I never want to butcher her name. But the owner, who is, this is another legacy Black business in our community. She has been fighting to keep her business in the community because, not surprisingly, as so many parcels, her landlord is selling the land where the studio itself burned down. She was able to make a bid for $600,000 that the landlord accepted. So it's under market, but the landlord accepted her bid and is giving her the opportunity to buy the land, which in itself is pretty exceptional. So shout out to that landlord, because that is absolutely the definition of doing the right thing for the community. But now she's got to come up with $600,000. So there was a big LA Times story, and she's got a GoFundMe if anyone's interested.
Up to 78 or 80,000.
Yeah, I think so too. Last night. So the bottom line, she needs to come up with $500,000 to now actually buy the land and then figure out how she's going to pay to build the studio. Actually, I think she has the financing of the rebuild in hand. It's a matter of finding a way to buy the land so that she can do it. So that is our small biz highlight for today. And I really hope that someone, some way, even if it's, thousands of people in their own little contributions, find a way to step up and help her make that a reality. Because again, we need those businesses. That's what our community is all about.
Indeed. And with that, I think it's time to sign off. So
we are. So tell them where to find us and where to send us hate mail.
Well, you can go to Shawna. She's on everything. Instagram, Facebook, whatever else.
Substack, beautiful Altadena.
Yeah, and I'm just on Substack, so I'm boring.
So, and then again, if anyone has questions or comments, I would love to hear them. And, questions, comments, things you want covered, opposing viewpoints, please send them. You can email us at beautifulaltadenaog@gmail.com. Again, beautifulaltadenaog@gmail.com. Until next time.
Or the Substack Alta Policy Wonk.
Yep, exactly. You can hit up Steve. So until next time.
We'll see you later.
We'll see you soon.
Bye now.